More ballot drama brewing in the Sunshine State.
They haven't even started the actual recount and tabulation. Fear not, they say they're going to get it done.
I think we're going to get to a point.
Turn home with a message for our European allies. Pay the United States for protection or protect yourself.
We finally have a president that's challenging some of these antiquated arrangements we have.
Democrats not even in control of the House yet, already promising an investigation overload into the Trump administration.
They want to investigate, but the American people want them to legislate.
Some midterm races have yet to be called, but that's not stopping the field of Democratic hopefuls. More than 36 Democrats have floated the idea of taking on President Trump in 2020.
Turn the camera behind the cameras. As you can see, we got a whole bunch of kids from Massapequa.
Massapequa High School's class is here. There's 42 kids who went through the pouring rain, hopped on a train at 5 in the morning, and got here. We're rotating them through.
That's awesome.
Give yourselves a round of applause today.
Come on, we need more noise than that.
Yeah. You got to learn in life to clap for yourself. That's one of the number one.
Well, when Dave just walked by there, you saw that the teleprompter is all loaded up, and we're going to Florida.
Yeah, the voting recount in Florida is delayed. Get this. Officials across the state are scrambling.
That's right. The deadline is Thursday at 3 o'clock. As we learned that Broward County's machine recount won't start until tomorrow. It was supposed to start in 59 minutes.
All right, well, that's where we find Griff Jenkins. He's live at the Office of the Elections with these new problems that they're dealing with down there. Hey, Griff, what's the latest?
Hey guys, good morning. Let me take you right into the tabulation room here at the Broward County Elections headquarters. They've finished all but the vote by mail group separating the first page, but they've got to do that, and it's going to take 189,000 ballots, probably till this afternoon or this evening. The actual recount will begin sometime late tonight or tomorrow. The officials here say that takes 15 hours, but they will get it done by Thursday's deadline. This, on top of the news, yesterday the election supervisor here, Brenda Snipes, defending that she has made several errors. Take a listen.
The lawsuits as they are written certainly cast aspersions on my character. I've worked here for about 15 years, and I have to say this is the first time that this office or I have been under such attacks. So if we make mistakes, we own mistakes.
Also yesterday, Governor Jeb Bush calling for Snipes' removal after the recounts by Twitter, and the candidates themselves, Senator Nelson and Governor Scott, just attacking each other. Listen to this.
Scott cannot oversee this process in a fair and impartial way, and thus he should remove himself from any role in the recount process.
My goal is that we follow the law. We know Brenda Snipes mixed illegal ballots with legal ballots. We know they've not let party officials in. The courts have said follow the law.
And we're far from done, because if they meet that Thursday deadline in the recount, lawyers here expect it will go to a hand recount because of the quarter-point margin error. So this story's got a lot more, guys.
Right. Thanks, Griff. It's just undervotes and overvotes, not every single ballot. Number two is there's never been an overturning of an election, but 14,000 votes. There's just a few hundred votes. There's never in our history been something like this.
It's rare to do recounts, but it's really rare to do three at once. That's what they're doing down in Florida. They're doing the governor's race, they're doing the Senate race, and they're doing the ag race. In Palm Beach County yesterday, they said, you know what, our machines are too old. We don't think we're going to be able to get done. Now they say, we think we'll be able to get the Senate race done by Thursday, but we don't know about ag commissioner, and we don't know about
I think enough of all this. Can we please fix those machines? They're saying they're antiquated. That's why they can't.
10 years old.
Pay the money, get the money somehow, and fix the machines so that the whole country doesn't have to wait like this every time there's an election in Broward County. All right, we asked the White House about it. Mercedes Schlapp, with the communications team there at the White House, she was on with us. She says she's confident that Governor Scott will become Senator Scott.
But we have confidence that Rick Scott will be the next Florida senator. He's leading now by 12,000 votes, and that's going to be a hard gap to close. And so I think we've already seen with the Broward County supervisor that there have been voting irregularities for nearly 2 decades. One of the greatest rights that we have and privileges is that of voting, and we need to ensure voter integrity at the state and local and federal level.
Yeah, regardless, they got to fix this thing. They got 2 years to do it after this when the presidential thing on the line. I mean, remember in 2000, the president was on the line. We didn't have it for weeks, and that was 500 votes. But this is if you're Governor Scott, you can understand his frustration from 80,000 vote advantage down to 14,000.
But he still has not been declared the winner, although he has declared himself a winner, and he has said that Mr. Nelson, Senator Nelson, is a sore loser. What's going to be awkward, though, later today, we've heard that apparently Mr. Scott, the governor, is intending to go to the new member orientation in Washington, D.C. You know, that's where they take the pictures. That's where they talk about things. They vote on leadership tomorrow. He's planning on doing that. But at the same time, you know, Bill Nelson still has an office for the U.S. Senate. He has not been, neither one of them have been declared the winner.
Maybe they should both go, because it's a shame that the winner is not going to be able to be there with all of his or his classmates.
Yeah, because he's not going to know the floor plan, because orientation only rolls once.
Right.
You know, so he's not going to know how to get anywhere unless he goes to orientation.
All right, so listen to this. The rules are if you send in an absentee ballot, if you send in a write-in ballot, it has to be there by 7 o'clock on the voting day, which was last Tuesday on the 6th. And then they count all of those, and all those have to be tallied by 30 minutes after the polls close. Those are the rules. Those were the rules that were established before the election. Well, now you have Nelson's attorney, Mark Elias, saying, hold on, the election was last Tuesday, but we want to change the rules now that everyone's gone to the polls. Listen to this.
Regarding overseas ballots, you know, if you're serving overseas or whatever, and you mail in a ballot, according to Florida law, currently you have 10 days after the election where it would count.
Those count because you're fighting overseas. And, yes.
And so now Nelson's attorneys are saying what you should do is just have that apply to all the mail-in ballots, which would be a change in the law.
All right, so
let's just change the law after that. Why not just change the rules if you're losing?
Read what Mark Elias tweeted.
All right, I'll do it out loud.
Please.
Okay, good.
Please do.
Breaking, get it? No Floridians should have their rightful vote denied because of mail/post office delays. We are suing to protect these ballots. Hashtag count all the votes.
Right. Also, they are challenging the exact match law where the signature on your provisional ballot has to match your voter registration.
That sounds like common sense, right?
Well, Elias says he doesn't like non-experts judging whether or not that's the real person, has suggested that that law has been thrown out in other states. It's unconstitutional.
So they need experts to determine if signatures look alike?
Because some people have said, look, this doesn't match that. So what do we do with it?
All right, then Governor Scott responded. Pretty funny, right?
Yeah, he said this. Here's some more lawsuits that Elias could get Bill Nelson and Chuck Schumer to pay him for, tongue-in-cheek. Although people who didn't vote but might like to now to vote anyway, preferably online via Snapchat, allow candidates who didn't run but might now like to participate, allow people in southern Georgia to vote. They're very close to Florida. Allow anyone who wasn't registered in Florida in 2000 to vote for Al Gore and have those results counted towards the 2000 election results.
Right. So Mike Huckabee was with us in the last hour, and he said, you know what? You have rules going into an election. You can't change them after the election.
You can't change the rules after the game is played. One of the big things Democrats are going to have to decide is, will they become a party that will accept the results of an election? They didn't accept the results of an election in 2016. They've never accepted that Donald Trump is president. And they're not accepting that, you've had elected Ron DeSantis and Rick Scott in Florida.
All right, so the margin is still over 10,000 in Mr. Scott's behalf, according to what we have heard. By the end of the day, maybe we'll know more.
And Ron DeSantis has over 36,000. So to think you're going to roll this through the machine and that's going to change dramatically would be counter to everything that we've seen when recounts.
Well, I think everyone's fine with counting all the votes that were in, legal votes that were in the day of the election, or the overseas votes for our men and women who are fighting overseas.
It's up to the folks in Florida. They got to figure it out on their own.
It's just bizarre that all these new votes are coming in and being counted after the
everyone check their trunk one last time so we get them all out.
Check the parking garage, check your trunk, and check the schools.
All right. Meanwhile, we go from the East Coast to the West Coast in a
to meet with several world leaders before attending a key international summit in place of President Trump. He's expected to put China's feet to the fire regarding trade and reassure American allies during his visit to the Indo-Pacific region. And a live look now at Capitol Hill, where Congress will soon get back to work. Lawmakers will meet in Washington today, swearing off one last time before Democrats take the House. Republicans are hoping to deliver President Trump's border wall promise to avoid a partial government shutdown next month. Democrats will push to prevent Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker from interfering in the Russia probe. Let's look at your headlines. I'll send it back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jillian. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron calling nationalism a betrayal of patriotism in a swipe.
Patriotism is the exact opposite of nationalism. Nationalism is a betrayal of patriotism by saying, our interests first, who cares about the others? We erase what a nation holds dearest, what gives it life, what makes it great, and what is essential, its moral values.
We have been reporting for you about French President Macron taking swipes at President Trump in France on Sunday. But our next guest, who is from Europe, says when it comes to nationalism, Macron got it all wrong. Here's Stuart Varney.
The word he used is rubbish. Well, here to explain this, host of Varney and Company on the Fox Business Network, Stuart Varney. Hey, Stuart.
I don't want to get bogged down in definitions, but to me, patriotism is the love of one's country. Nationalism is respect for and defense of your country's interests. They're not contradictory, they're complementary. Now, Emmanuel Macron, president of France, he's a globalist. Essentially, he's part of this European experiment in globalism where individual companies are not allowed to make laws for themselves, not allowed to represent their own individual country's interests. Oh, no, you've got to surrender that self-interest and give it up to the globalists and the elites of Europe. That experiment is falling to pieces. Macron has what? He's got a
26 to 30% approval rate.
That's it. Europe is falling to pieces. This globalist experiment just isn't working. And President Trump is the exact opposite. He's a nationalist, and a self-admitted nationalist, and he puts America's interests first.
So
what's wrong with that?
The European Union and the U.S. are trying to get a new trade agreement. Evidently, right. Germany is giving in, sees what we want, and sees the benefits in doing it. And it's France is standing in our way. They're sitting there. He is trying to get his popularity up by beating up on President Trump.
I believe President Trump has just tweeted on the subject of America and France.
This is what he said. He said, on trade, France makes excellent wine, but so does the U.S. The problem is that France makes it very hard for the U.S. to sell its wines into France and charges big tariffs, whereas the U.S. makes it easy for French wines and charges very small tariffs. Not fair, must change.
Macron is the holdout of the globalists. Now that Angela Merkel is leaving the scene, so to speak, all you're left with is Macron. And as the president points out there, it is unfair. In that area, the wine trade, that is grossly unfair.
Stuart, there are so many areas that people are unfamiliar, have been historically, with our trade deals. And now when you rip it apart, it's like, well, why do they get such a good deal and we get such a bad deal?
President Trump is saying America first. He will defend America's interests. The globalists are the other side of the fence. Their argument is collapsing. Open borders, we pay for their defense, so-called global free trade agreements, they're all collapsing. It is President Trump who's making the running with his nationalistic approach. That's the wrong word to use. His nationalism, which promotes America.
Right.
What's wrong?
But we don't need a brushback pitch as a country. We have not been the problem with the past wars. I was highly insulted by all the insinuations over the weekend.
Agreed. 100%.
Stuart, thank you so
How about that, Brian?
Can you believe that? Good job, Stuart.
I'll shake on that one.
We'll see you at 9 to noon. We're doing a simulcast today on radio.
We are indeed.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
Democrats already lining up their top priority when they take control of the House. Gun control.
Priority for us.
We have a chance to say loud and clear that the gun lobby is no longer in charge of our gun laws in this country.
Dana Lash will react.
On a Senate race to a Democrat, Kyrsten Sinema.
I just called Kyrsten Sinema and congratulated her on becoming Arizona's first female senator after a hard-fought battle. I wish her all success as she represents Arizona in the Senate.
The latest tally puts Sinema ahead by more than 38,000 votes. He'll replace the retiring Jeff Flake. And in Maine, election results will come down to a computer algorithm. It'll determine if a Democrat unseats a Republican in the state's 2nd district. This is the first federal race in the nation to use a ranked choice voting system. The system lets voters rank their top candidate 1 through 6. Whoever gets the majority wins.
Seems kind of complicated. Meanwhile, Democrats won back the House in the midterm elections, wasted no time in declaring their top priority. It is gun control.
This will be a priority for us in the next Congress. Common sense background checks to prevent guns going into wrong hands.
We will certainly pursue sensible gun control legislation as one of our priorities.
We have a chance to say loud and clear that the gun lobby is no longer in charge of our gun laws.
Here to react is NRA spokesperson Dana Lash. Dana, what is your reaction when you hear all of that?
Oh, well, Ainsley and Brian and Steve, good morning to you all. When I hear Nancy Pelosi say that, I hear someone who's talking about the failed gun control laws in her state, and she discusses expanding them nationally as though that's going to be the magical ingredient that makes those work. And as we've seen time and time again, it doesn't, in fact, help. It doesn't make it work. And they can talk about pushing forward anti-gun legislation in the House, but let's think of all of the 2A victories that law-abiding gun owners won just in the past elections, and law-abiding gun owners spent significantly less dollars than the anti-gun movement, which is mostly funded by people like Michael Bloomberg. I mean, we don't have, a really rich sugar daddy, for the lack of a better way to put it, to go and fund this. We're just millions of people who want to make sure that our rights to self-defense, our Second Amendment rights, are protected. And so as a result of that, I mean, when you look at the results, I mean, for instance, the House candidates, 80% of NRA-endorsed House candidates won those races. 85% of NRA-endorsed candidates won races statewide, and we added and extended that Senate majority. So, I mean, we have divided houses, divided state legislatures across the country, and I think it goes to show that Nancy Pelosi really doesn't, I mean, she's really not in tune with what Americans want. When you look at the gun control movement, which I guess ground zero was Florida, those expectations didn't even materialize in the results. So she's going to have a hard fight ahead of her because gun owners aren't going to allow it.
Well, one of the things, Dana, that Fox News did on Election Day was we surveyed over 100,000 people coast to coast, and 61% of the voters said they wanted stricter gun laws. 61%. 8% wanted less strict laws. So what does that tell you about where America's head is right now?
I think that there's also a lot of confusion to that point, Steve, in terms of what we actually do have, the laws that we do have and the laws that we don't. I mean, for instance, a lot of people don't realize, apparently, that we do have background checks. We have existing background checks. And when you talk about universal background checks, well, unfortunately, when you look at the tragedies that have taken place previously in California, universal background checks were in place and didn't prevent any of those things. And we also have a lot of flaws and errors that, in terms of administratively, into the system at that level, state by state level. So the thing is that, look, you have to enforce the laws that we have, and that actually isn't being done consistently. That is one of the common denominators in every single one of these tragedies. You have missed opportunities to prevent people who should not be having access from having access, and furthermore, you have procedures that are not followed consistently across the board. And this is, as I said, the common denominator in every single one of these tragedies. And law-abiding people should not always be paying the price for the actions of criminals. It makes no sense to disarm moms and dads across the country, men and women across the country, and make them more susceptible to threats because a criminal is going to abuse the law, break the law, and get illegal access.
Wow. All right, Dana, thanks so much. Appreciate it. We'll see what is on the top of their agenda. There's also talk of 85 different subpoenas that could be coming.
Investigations,
which will start with subpoenas.
All right, look who's in our green room now. It's Mike Rowe, and he brought his mama with him. There she is.
The author of a brand new book.
And stand by, you're on TV. Good morning. All right. Hi, Mom. Percent. It's the lowest it's been in nearly 50 years.
All right, so as the amount of people working in the United States is growing, will their confidence and their pride grow as well.
All right, let's ask our next guest. You know him for showcasing the importance of hard work through shows like Dirty Jobs. Now he's got many things going on social media. Also, it's very important to find out who raised Mike Rowe, and that is his mom, Peggy Rowe. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Congratulations on the brand new book.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk to you about the book and talk to you about some of these videos and the letters that you write, Mike. But we did want to start with some news of the day. The unemployment numbers are down. The importance of getting jobs. Why is that so important for our country?
Well, it's our identity. You know, what we do has always been the centerpiece of who we are. And for the last 10 years, my foundation has been focused on opportunity that actually exists. Right. So there's this narrative, we've discussed it 1,000 times, that the reason people aren't working is because opportunity's dead. That's just not the case. We have nearly 7 million jobs now that are available.
If you want a job, there's a job waiting for you.
Well, 75% of them don't require a 4-year degree. They require training. So my little foundation has always been focused on that. My grandfather, who was kind enough to bring her into the world, or at least in part, was an electrical contractor, lived right next door to us. So I had a front row seat growing up to the kind of work ethic and the kind of skill that built our country. You know?
Is that your grandfather?
Where is he? Yes, that's your dad. That's your dad, Mom, and that's Nana right there.
And which brings us to a full introduction. This is Peggy Rowe right here. And you were kind enough to, how did you get your son to write the foreword on your book? That was a big coup. He's famous.
I know he is.
Right.
But he's still my son.
Right.
And he does what I tell him to do.
Right. What was he like when
Would
he
you
was
like
little?
a book?
Yes, we love the fact that you are now 100% employed promoting this book. It's called About My Mother.
Yes, it is. And it is about my mother. About growing up with a mother who was always in charge. Always in charge.
What does that
and a
mean,
funny
always
woman.
In charge?
She made all the decisions. All the decisions. She told me which political party I was in when I was little.
Which party were you in?
Well, that's personal.
Don't tell him.
But now I think for myself.
How important is that to be a strong mother? What'd you learn from her?
She was honest, first and foremost. Like I say, she was always in charge. She made all the decisions. We didn't do anything unless it was okay with my mother. She was a crazy, wacky baseball fan. The Baltimore Orioles, they were at the top of her list. She loved baseball.
And I tell you, one time she actually saw Orioles jersey and took off her shirt and tried it on.
In the busy aisle of Macy's department store, she took her blouse off and tried on an Orioles jersey. And that's the sort of thing my mother did.
Right. And Mike, would you do something similar?
I'm going to do it right now, Brian.
Thank you very much. No jersey, so keep it on.
My mom's been writing stories all of her life, and she sends them to me. And from time to I've never really thought about it in terms of a book, but the truth is, for the last 80 years, she's been writing multiple books. And we were chatting earlier about...
She's a beautiful writer, yeah.
She wrote a story about losing her big blue purse in the Walmart parking lot and the calamity that ensued and the recovery therein. And I read that story on Facebook.
And you can barely get through it. You're laughing so hard.
It's the funniest thing I've ever read. 70 million people see the story.
You have to go and watch this. It's so cute. And she talks about your father's hearing aids.
Oh, the hearing aids are going off. He's diving in, trash cans, dialing his number, trying to find the purse. It's pandemonium. I read the story on Facebook. Publishers call and say, if you can get her to write a bunch of stories like that, you got a bestseller. What she does is she goes off and writes this book. I'm not even in it. It's all about her mom.
You're in 2 chapters.
I'm in 2 chapters, so I got that going for me, which is awesome.
I like the way you described the fact that she went to the Irma Bombeck Writers Workshop out in Ohio. I've been. It's terrific. And then you two had a conversation about that, and it shocked you.
Oh, with your language.
Well, I hung out with some younger people. We might have had a drink at night. I learned some new words.
And used them.
But it was very, not often. Really, this is a very wholesome book. But buy it anyway. Yes.
Right. It is an aggressively G-rated book. Honestly, guys, the reason that we're here and the reason that we're making the tour is there's all the trouble in the world. You know, I mean, the headlines are what the headlines are. And when I read this for the first time, I was just like, this is the most aggressive piece of good news I've ever seen. It was part Irma Bombeck. It was part Russell Baker, if you remember him. It's just these old... it's nostalgia. And I think it's this idea that no matter how you vote or who you are, you have a mother or you had one and a grandmother, and if you're missing any of that in your daily life, good grief.
We're caught up in the national stories, but we're really made up a bunch of local, personal, family stories.
Can he talk?
He's very good.
He can talk until the cows come home.
Was he always like that?
No. Oh, as a child, he was very shy.
Really?
Very shy. Oh, yeah, and
What
a neat
happened?
freak.
He got a cable show, then he started talking.
I
Paid by the
really
word.
worried that he was going to grow up to be a recluse. I really worried about him until he got into middle school, I guess, and then he blossomed.
Okay.
Came out of his shell,
He
so
did.
to speak.
How many children do you have?
3. I have to say, you guys are beautiful.
Wow.
You really are.
Thank you.
I mean, you make me seem very
So
I feel very frumpy sitting
You're not,
here.
you would sell a book.
So get out of here.
What is it like to be on this couch and talking about a book? All these stories that you kept within your family, now the whole country sees. What is that like?
It's good. It's exhilarating. It's also terrifying. It's terrifying to be on live television.
You're doing a great job. What do you think about your son's career? I'm sure you're proud of him.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Quite often I am.
That brief period when he was on CNN, that must have been hard for your family.
No, the hard part was dirty jobs when he did those unspeakable jobs that somebody gets up, excuse me, every day and does.
I know.
And he's proud of those people and he respects them, and that makes me proud.
But now he has made it his life's goal to make sure that, people understand there are jobs out there. You don't have to go to college. You can learn how to weld. You can learn how to do all sorts of stuff. You can learn electricity like the guy who lived next door to you.
Master it, in fact.
Mike, what do you love most about your mom?
I love the fact that she's going to be 81 years old next month, and that all her life she wanted to do something. And when she finally got the chance to do it, all she had to do was what the publishers asked her to do, which was to write a specific type of book. What she did was she went away and she wrote the exact opposite. I read it, and it just was terrific, and nobody would publish it, so we printed 10,000 copies. They sold out in 2 weeks. Now we've got Simon & Schuster. We've got our friends over at Forefront. She's going to be a best-selling author. There's no doubt about it. The reviews for the thing are crazy. And right now, I'm shamelessly hawking my mother's book. But if we can get it on the bestseller list, well, then I think I can cross you off my Christmas list, and my work is done,
no
right?
doubt about it.
You know how it is, Brian.
Right.
So, look, that's what I'm most proud of. She did the thing she wanted to do. She did it the way she wanted to do it. And...
Very Sinatra.
I'll tell you something better.
And Elvis.
Know what this is?
And her mother.
She lived the life she wanted to live, and now that's just chronicling the life that she lived.
Look, I grew up with basically 2 sets of parents. My mom and dad, who were unspeakably terrific, and then right next door, my grandparents. And so everything that they said by way of example was unfolding next door by way of reality. And so, we talk a lot about dads and moms, obviously, but the importance of grandparents in our lives, it's just, you can't overstate it.
Well, I love the fact that you said there's so much serious news out there, and, we talk about it all day long. It's nice to have an escape. Folks, check out this book. It's about to become a New York Times bestseller. It's called All About My Mother, True Stories of a Horse-Crazy Daughter and Her Baseball-Obsessed Mother. Peggy Rowe. And one of her 3 children.
One of my 3 children.
Yeah.
If you like to laugh, you'll like the book.
Okay. You'll laugh real hard.
All right.
Congratulations.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And now, I know you haven't done this before. We have to toss to Jillian. Jillian, you have some breaking news that was
That's
happening.
right. Peggy, you were fabulous, by the way. Truly enjoyed that segment. Yes, that is great. All right, let's get you caught up on this news now. Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker's appointment now facing a court challenge. The state of Maryland claims the president's pick to temporarily run the DOJ isn't legal. Mercedes Schlapp joined us earlier from the White House. She says the law is on Whitaker's side.
The president and the Department of Justice leadership has confidence in Matt Whitaker. He has a full and legal authority under the Vacancy Reform Act of 1998.
Maryland wants a judge to declare Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein as acting attorney general. The air traffic controller who went silent for 40 minutes at a busy airport is now out of a job. FAA officials revealing that the employee working by herself in Las Vegas is no longer employed by the agency. A pilot of an incoming plane struggled to communicate with her as she slurred her words and became unresponsive. It's unclear why she was incapacitated. And a marriage ends with a blast. Take a look at this. A Texas woman celebrating her divorce after 14 years of marriage by blowing up her wedding dress. She and her family rigging 20 pounds of explosives to the dress. It was heard and felt up to 15 miles away. That's an interesting one. Let's look at your headlines. You.
Sometimes things are great when they're over.
Right.
All right. Meanwhile, Fox News alert: violence erupting in the Middle East overnight as tensions between the apartment building that was hit with a rocket. Trey.
Brian, Steve, Ainsley, good morning. Right now, as we speak, just a few miles south, rockets are being fired into southern Israel after a barrage of rockets into Israel from Gaza last night. The Israeli military is ramping up their strikes inside the Gaza Strip. They're trying to send a message to the group that is currently in control of Gaza, Hamas, trying to bring them back to the negotiating table when it comes to a potential ceasefire, but doing it this time in a way that sends a forceful message. Over the past 24 hours, the Israeli Air Force has struck a number of targets inside of Gaza, including 2 major Hamas media buildings and also a series of apartment buildings. Also, many structures here in Israel have been hit, including a bakery in the town of Sderot and also this apartment building behind me. I do want to show you the scene here. Early this morning, this building was hit by a rocket. It exploded upon impact, killing 1 man inside and injuring dozens. Fox News did enter the building earlier today. We saw blood splattered on the walls and across the floors. Additionally, there were a number of marks in the concrete walls that had been blasted through by this very rocket. This is just one of many buildings in southern Israel, Brian, Ainsley, and Steve, that has been hit by rocket fire. We hear sirens in the distance often, and we are getting alerts that rocket fire does continue here in southern Israel. All of this as Egyptian negotiators are scheduled to come to the region tomorrow in an effort to bring Hamas and the Israelis back to the table and try to develop some sort of ceasefire agreement that could reduce some of the violence that has been erupting in the region. Brian, Ainsley, Steve.
All right, Trey Yingst live in Israel. Thank you, Trey.
It's going to be a crazy day.
48 minutes after the top of the hour, as Florida scrambles to meet the deadline for the recount, the question is, do we need to fix the election system? Our next guest has a possible solution.
But first, with your permission, guys, I'd like to go to Sandra Smith because I want to find out what's on her show.
Good morning, Brian, Ainsley, and Steve. Good morning, everyone. 1 week later, still a lot of election news rolling in this morning. Democrats pulling off a win and flipping a red seat blue in Arizona. Martha McSally conceding to Kyrsten Sinema last night. Meanwhile, in Florida, the recount drama continues there. We're going to have the latest on the ground. And since Democrats won control of the House, what exactly does their agenda look like? House Majority Leader Steve Scalise is here. He will join us live in studio on that. Ken Starr is our headliner today. Our A-team is gearing up. A big Tuesday morning in America's Newsroom. Join Bill and me in just a few moments.
Right now in the state of Florida, officials are scrambling to the recount deadline, which is Thursday, 3 o'clock. And our next guest says Americans deserve a fair election process, and the solution is to prevent this from happening again. But how do you do that?
Well, let's ask the expert. Here to explain is former Ohio Secretary of State Ken Blackwell. Good morning to you. So we were talking to Mercedes Schlapp, who is with Communications Office at the White House, and we were asking her who's responsible for this, and she said it's the Secretary of State. You have experience in this in Ohio. Is that the person that they're going to look to fix this problem down in Florida?
I think they're going to look to the Secretary of State to be in the lead, but the Attorney General of Florida has a role, as does the governor. Look, the bottom line is that we cannot allow an election to be corrupted by hiding behind the veil of gross incompetence. And so that means that there are some steps that we have to take. One, we have to clean up, Florida has to clean up, as our other states are doing, their voter rolls. We had to make sure that folks who are deceased are taken off of the rolls, folks who have moved from a state are taken off of the rolls in the state that they have left. We, in fact, have to make sure that there are standards of transparency, and they must be enforced. And And thirdly, it is very important that there are penalties to folks and personnel that violate these rules. Because, you know, my dad used to always say, if you reward bad behavior, all you're going to get is more bad behavior.
But Ken, you know about Broward County. You sued them, right? I mean, your organization sued them. You could have called this ahead of time.
Well, hey, look, but that's the point. You have to have eyes on the process, transparency, and as I've told many people, and you, Brian, the other week, you know, those who want to do evil love the darkness. We have a responsibility to make sure that our system, in a bipartisan way, has eyeballs on all of the process, at every step of the process. That is so important. And this notion that you can have chronic massive incompetence that is excused, that corrupts a process, that lowers confidence in the results, and it breeds distrust.
Ken, real quickly, give us one thing Florida, in particular Broward County perhaps, should do to fix it.
Transparency, and get rid of folks who violate the standards. 3 strikes and you're out. That's baseball, and that's criminal justice system. 3 strikes and you're out. Broward County, this person has had many strikes.
Ken Blackwell, thanks so much.
Thank you. More Fox and Friends, moments away.